The next item of business is topical questions, and at question number 1, I call Daniel Johnson.
You're all ready. Thank you. Apologies. To ask the Scottish Government how it will work with the UK Government on the recently announced £200 million investment in Grangemouth as part of the National Wealth Fund.
Cabinet Secretary Gillian Martin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Last week, the First Minister announced the new £25 million Grangemouth Just Transition Fund as part of the nearly £90 million of support to Grangemouth plan from this Government. And we welcome the recent UK Government announcement this weekend that £200 million will also be allocated to Grangemouth from the National Wealth Fund. We're already engaging with the UK Government on this and are seeking clarity on the details of the fund to ensure alignment with our interventions to maximise the impact for the workforce, the community and business development, and I'm committed to continuing my very collaborative relationship with the UK Energy Secretary to secure a long-term and sustainable future for Grangemouth. And I hope Daniel Johnson can show a similar collaborative approach for Grangemouth by backing the budget and the monies that we've announced at stage 3 this afternoon.
Daniel Johnson.
Our position on the budget is clear, and I think this is such a big issue. I don't think the workers in Grangemouth would thank us to play politics with it. And actually, critically, of all the numbers, it's an important point. I was about to say, of all the numbers of great importance, I think the most important number is the 400 people who have been given the redundancy notices. So I was wondering if I could ask the Minister, given that this is the start of the hard work to attract the investment in, which is what these funds are expected to do, what steps the Scottish Government will be taking alongside the UK Government to attract this investment, and critically, will these sums be available to fund Project Willow?
Cabinet Secretary.
So, first of all, I'm not playing politics. I'm making a point that it is important that we all get behind any money that is pledged by any government to support the workers of Grangemouth, and I don't mean that to be a party or political point. This is not the start of the hard work. Indeed, it's not the start of the hard work from both governments. Since the new UK Government came in, we've had a much more collaborative relationship than we did with the previous UK Government, and we've been working very hard, initially, to prevent the closure and to ask for Petro Eneos to make a different decision, and we have been unstinting in that, and that is still the course of action that I would like to see. But as regards the monies and what's done with the 200 million and indeed the 90 million and the 25 Just Transition Fund, 25 million Just Transition Fund, certainly I want to be working with the Grangemouth Future Industries Board and the UK Government in this, because they are absolutely critical. We've been working together for a good 2 years now on this, on what needs to be happening in the Grangemouth area. Our 25 million Just Transition Fund is going to be deployed this year, and we have a precedent for how that has worked with the North East and Moray Just Transition Fund and some of the projects that has supported for oil and gas workers and indeed the supply chain. So the first thing I'm going to do after this budget is pass this afternoon, touch wood, pass this afternoon, is once I know those monies are coming to that Just Transition Fund, I'm going to be meeting with my officials to make sure that we get an early engagement in with the Grangemouth Future Industries Board and talk about how that can be deployed and how the mechanisms are put in place for that. I'll be having a similar conversation with Ed Miliband, I hope very soon. I'm writing to him this afternoon to have a discussion about how the 200 million can work with that money.
Thank you. There's a great deal of interest, and I would be grateful for concise questions and responses. Daniel Johnson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. So, with the £25 million from the Scottish Government, £200 million from the UK Government, on top of the £100 million City deal, this is one of the largest industrial interventions that this country has seen in decades. But it's not just about the money. There's a number of policy and regulatory changes that will be required, particularly if we're looking at Project Willow and biorefining. Could the Cabinet Secretary set out how those are going to be examined and how they will take the action steps that we expect in the Project Willow public document in the coming days so that we can implement those changes?
Cabinet Secretary.
So I have been talking about some of the regulatory changes that would have to be made by the UK Government well before the Labour Government was in place. I had those discussions with the Conservative governments. I'm pleased to say that I've got a lot more feedback in our discussions about what might need to be done. Project Willow has been absolutely essential in that, because Project Willow, as well as actually looking at some of the areas in which the refinery can adapt and become a different type of plant for sustainable aviation fuel or for biorefinery does require regulatory change as well, and that's going to be outlined in Project Willow. UK Government obviously have got most locus in that, but we're already aware on what some of those policy changes should be, and I stand ready to support them in making the right decisions that will allow some of these future industries, and I hope it's in the short term we have a future industries, and make them viable and make sure that they're competitive when we are in a situation where there's other countries that already may have these regulatory changes in place, and we can't be left behind.
Thank you. Michelle Thompson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I too welcome the additional monies, although I note that the UK Government application process will be time-consuming, with money made available as debt or equity on the probability of a sufficient return on investment to the UK Government. But for applications to be made by business at pace, there must be, as the Minister has already stated, considerably more policy certainty. So I'm wondering, I know the Minister has been pursuing it, but has she had any advice thus far from the UK Government? Will there be a shift in their current attitude to carbon capture and storage and the Acorn project, which is of course a critical enabler for green hydrogen, or the possibility of Greenmouth and the associated work becoming a test site for sustainable aviation fuel? Because I repeat, policy certainty will be as much needed as finance to encourage confidence in business investment.
Cabinet Secretary.
What Michelle Thompson's just outlined is absolutely critical. I welcome the response from the Prime Minister, the First Minister's call for the UK Government to provide a fair share of support for Grangemouth, but I do agree that we need policy certainty, particularly in CCUS. I've had repeated discussions with the former and the current UK Government. I remain deeply frustrated that there's still no clarity on timelines, funding and criteria for the Acorn project. I think it will provide that policy certainty and that investability. It will ramp up the investability that there is in the plant for people, and I've been told that by people who have an interest in this. I agree wholeheartedly Acorn project being given the go-ahead is the next intervention that the UK Government should make, and I personally think it should be made immediately, and I hope that the whole Chamber will support me on that, because I think that would be a game changer here.
Thank you. Stephen Kerr.
Daniel Johnson's right. This is about jobs, but it's not just about 400 jobs. It's about nearly 3,000 jobs. That's the economic impact assessment of what is happening at Grangemouth. And it's a great pity that we don't have more detail on the 200 million and exactly how that will be distributed, how it will be used. And it's a great pity that we still really don't have much detail about the 25 million. I would really like to hear a lot more detail about how that money is going to be used. And I'd also like the Minister to tell us about Project Willow, the report. I remember her saying it would come out by the end of this month. Well, this is the end of the month. When exactly will we see it? Colin Mackay of STV saw it. He even wrote a detailed report on it. So why we haven't seen it, I don't understand. Have Petro Ineos got a copy of Project Willow, the EY report? How much did it cost? And how specific are the proposals in Willow? Are they costed? And where will the investment come from? These are all the burning questions that are on the minds of the people of Grangemouth.
Cabinet Secretary.
There is a lot of questions in there. I won't have time to answer all of them. Some of the detail on there, particularly about the cost of Project Willow, I'll be able to write to the member and have that. It was money that was put in by the Scottish Government and the UK Government. There wasn't actually any money put in by Petro Ineos. It is due by the end of the month, and I don't see any... there's nothing been said to me that said that that will slip in any way. And the 25 million, as I mentioned, obviously the budget needs to be passed today for that 25 million to be released. But it is my #1 priority, once I know that that 25 million has been secured and that Parliament has voted for it, to look at, particularly with the Grangemouth Future Industries Board, because this is not just about the refinery, it's about the industrial complex of Grangemouth in the whole, as to how that can be deployed and used, because that will only be able to be deployed in the way that makes a difference if we work together with the people of Grangemouth and the stakeholders within Grangemouth, in much the same way that we did with the North East and Moray Just Transition Fund, which has been very successful.
Gillian Mackay.
Officer. All the money that has been announced for Grangemouth is absolutely welcome, but trying to get that money out quickly doesn't always mean that money gets spent in the correct projects for the area. At the Grangemouth Community Council meeting last Thursday, there were 120 people in the room asking about the industrial future of Grangemouth and wanting to resolve some of that disconnect between them and industry. So how can the Cabinet Secretary implore to people that that disconnect is resolved, but also ensure that projects are value for money and will support both skills and the local community?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, both the local council and the many community councils are actually members of the Grangemouth Future Industries Board, and that is the vehicle in which, if there is any disconnect, we will make sure that that is resolved. The £25 million, as I've said, can be deployed over the next year, but it has to be deployed in the right way. That's actually creating more opportunities for the workers, creating more opportunities for the supply chain, and creating more opportunities for the communities in there. And it will be the supply chain, the communities and the workers that will be dictating how that money is spent, and I need to work with them via the vehicle of the Grangemouth Future Industry, as which some of the people that Gillian Mackay has mentioned are members.
Thank you. Question number 2, Tess White.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on its role in ensuring that public bodies are meeting their legal obligations under the Equality Act 2010, following recent correspondence from the Equality and Human Rights Commission.
Cabinet Secretary Shirley-Anne Somerville.
The Scottish Government is considering the letter from the Equality and Human Rights Commission and will of course engage with the Commission. Under the Equality Act 2010 Specific Duties Scotland Regulations 2012, public authorities are under a duty to assess and review proposed new or revised policies and practices. This Government stands firmly behind the separate and single-sex exemptions provided in the 2010 Act. Members will be aware this allows for trans people to be excluded when this is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. Public bodies are responsible for complying with the 2010 Act and its regulations.
Tess White.
Cabinet Secretary, the Equalities Regulator wrote to NHS 5 last week, pointing out that under statutory public sector equality duties, the Health Board must, and I quote, assess and review proposed new or revised policies or practices. The Herald reports today that NHS 5 skipped this vital step when it allows a trans-identified male doctor to use a female changing room. This is serious. It means that it may have failed to comply with its legal obligations to assess the impact of its policies on women. So let me ask the Cabinet Secretary a very simple question. Does she know how many other NHS institutions are operating this potentially unlawful policy?
Cabinet Secretary.
As ministers have made clear on a number of occasions, we cannot comment on ongoing cases such as the one in NHS 5. In general, Presiding Officer, I have also made clear in my original answer that ministers are very clear that they stand firmly behind the provisions in the Equality Act and the exemptions contained within it. We absolutely expect public bodies to conduct their policies and their procedures in line with the legislation in place. As the EHRC said in their letter, they are the statutory regulator for equality in Scotland and they promote and enforce compliance with the Equality Act 2010. Ministers are, as we always have been, happy to discuss with the Commission how the Scottish Government and the Commission can help public bodies comply with their obligations under the Equality Act.
Tess White.
Cabinet Secretary, the EHRC was clear in its correspondence that the Scottish Government, and we're here now talking about the Scottish Government, has a role, it does have a role, in ensuring that NHS Scotland and other public bodies are meeting their legal obligations under the Equality Act 2010. And I'm glad that the Cabinet Secretary does today say that it will fulfil its duties. Caroline Lamb is the Chief Executive of NHS Scotland and sits at the Scottish Government's top table as Director General for Health and Social Care. Failings like these lead straight to the heart of the Scottish Government. SNP ministers keep trying to ride two horses on single-sex bases, but they can't keep reading out the same script that sex is protected under the Equality Act 2010 while arguing in the UK's highest court that sex does not mean biological sex. And my question, Presiding Officer, is will this SNP government protect single-sex spaces for biological women in Scotland's public services? Yes or no?
Cabinet Secretary.
The member refers to another live court case, and therefore I, of course, will not comment on that. And with the greatest respect to Tess White, the reason why the answers from Scottish ministers are the same is because they are based on the legislation that is in place, that is the Equality Act and the regulations I mentioned in my previous answer. The Government absolutely expects all public bodies to fulfil their obligations under the regulations that are based under the Equalities Act. And the reasons the answers are similar, for the benefit of the member once again, is because that is our clear expectation. There has been no change in the Government's policy. As I said in my original answer, we stand firmly behind the 2010 Act and the exemptions that are within that. That has been the policy of this Government all along.
Thank you. We are now past the scheduled time for this item of business. I'm going to allow it to continue for a few minutes, but I absolutely must insist on concise questions and responses, and I call Carol Mockin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary if she is confident that all health and safety workplace regulations are being complied with and that all public bodies have single-sex toilets clearly marked male and female? Can I ask the Cabinet Secretary that in her answer she gives us evidence on how she has collected this data, and if it is not available, commit to obtaining such information?
Cabinet Secretary.
The member quite rightly points to the fact that there are other regulations on top of the ones I've mentioned in my original answer, for example, those that specifically refer to the workplace. But I would once again say that they are also contained within the belief that the Government has that all public bodies should fulfil their obligations under all pieces of legislation with reference to this, and those include those that are specifically in relation to the workplace.
Rachel Hamilton.
Presiding Officer, does the Cabinet Secretary have full confidence that all public sector bodies in Scotland, including NHS Scotland, are complying with the requirements set out in the Equality Act 2010 to produce an impact equality assessment in relation to the provision of single-sex spaces? Yes or no?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, once again, for the benefit of the member, we are very, very committed to working with the EHRC. There's a role for government and there is a role for the Commission in this. As I said in an earlier answer, they are the statutory regulator for equality in Scotland, and they promote and enforce compliance with the Equality Act and indeed have guidance on these very matters. And we look forward to working with the Commission and indeed meeting with the Commission in due course to discuss these matters in detail.
Joe Fitzpatrick.
Given the tenor and tone of questioning in this area, can I ask the Cabinet Secretary how we can make sure that trans people across Scotland feel included and protected in their workplace?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, I think it's very important, Presiding Officer, that all of us in this chamber ensure that we conduct ourselves in a manner where we respect everyone's rights. And we are quite rightly questioned on the promotion and the protection of women's rights, and that is absolutely integral to the work that the Scottish Government does. We will continue to support the trans community. They are one of the most marginalised in Scotland, and it is important that we do so, but we will not do that in a way that provides any doubt on our commitment to the Equality Act and ensuring that single-sex space exemptions exist and should have practical effect.
Thank you. Ash Regan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Lack of clarity, and I have to say lack of understanding of the law from the Government, has left working women in Scotland in the absolutely ridiculous position of having legally provided single-sex spaces open to anyone who identifies into them. The Minister has repeatedly said that she expects public bodies to uphold the law, but I'm not hearing what the Government is doing about it. So perhaps I can make a suggestion. Perhaps this might be able to be got under control by the Government by making the upholding of public sector duties a condition of their funding. Will the Government commit to that?
Cabinet Secretary.
I go back to the point, Presiding Officer, that the Government expects all public bodies to actually respect and obey and comply with the law and have that in procedures, Presiding Officer.
Thank you. Members, do let's ensure that we are not shouting over one another. And I call Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I have to say to the Cabinet Secretary, all we are getting is the same answer every time, and it's not good enough. I know it's uncomfortable for the Government, but they must respond to the questions that members have. So can I ask the Cabinet Secretary, she said in her statement that she and the Government are considering the letter from the EHRC. It was sent last week. It's 1 page long and only contains 6 paragraphs. So how much longer do they need to consider the letter? Will they publish their response to the EHRC? And when they have done so, will they bring forward a statement in this chamber to finally answer questions about this issue?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, for the avoidance again of any doubt, Presiding Officer, the answers are similar because they're based on the law of the land and the Equality Act, and that's exactly what this Government will continue to refer back to. The member raises the point about the letter. Yes, it's a reasonably short letter, but it does contain important challenges and questions of the Government, and I think it is important that we do take time to reflect on that. And indeed, if we didn't, Presiding Officer, I think members would be here criticising us for that. We will, of course, move forward with meeting with the Commission. We do look forward to working with them. There is an important role for the Government and an important role for the Commission in this, and I'm sure members will have ample opportunity to continue to question Government on this over the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you. That concludes topical questions.